Good morning. Please rise for the March On of the Colors.
Who's that? Arms. Shoulder. Arms. Colors. Pose. Cut. Right. Face. Whoa. Watch.
Good morning. Today's Memorial Day service is hosted by the VFW Post 4352 and American Legion Post 3. We'll begin today's memorial service with the American Legion State Commander Hunter Davis.
I want to welcome those folks that are out here today. The American Legion has a long history of supporting all these activities that we see every year. Memorial Day in particular is near and dear to the heart of every veteran because of their friends, their sons, their daughters, their husbands, their wives, the many that have fallen through the decades, years, hundreds of years of the United States. Again, thank everybody for coming out, and particularly to our far-flung watchers. We're trying the new technology out for a Memorial Day that takes on a whole new meaning in these times. Thank you.
We'll follow with the invocation of the VFW Chaplain Dennis Spurgeon.
May we bow our heads. Father God, we come before you today in this location and all across this nation, Lord, to remember those that have gone before us, our brothers and sisters in arms. Lord, we give thanks to you for your inspired word that describes these individuals. Greater love has no one than this, that a man lay down his life for his friends. So many of these warriors, Lord, their battle was short, within just minutes, others for years. Lord, let us not forget the great sacrifice made by them and what they've done for this nation to bring it what it is. So bring us together as one in this nation, Lord, to remember forever the sacrifices made for us, as Jesus did made sacrifice for all the world. Amen.
Thank you, Chaplain. We have a number of guest speakers today. So let's begin with United States Coast Guard Base Ketchikan Commander Arthur Biggs.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm honored to be speaking with you today on such an important occasion. For many Americans, Memorial Day marks the start of summer. It's a well-earned day off, an opportunity to spend time with loved ones, maybe make a trip to the beach or host a barbecue. It's a privilege we enjoy today, thanks to the sacrifices made by men and women who are the true reason for this occasion. The purpose of Memorial Day is to remember those American heroes who raised their right hands and volunteered to defend America. As Ronald Reagan said of these men and women, they didn't volunteer to die, they volunteered to defend values for which men have always been willing to die if need be. The values which make up what we call civilization. And how they must have wished, in all the ugliness that war brings, that no other generation of young men to follow would have undergone that same experience. As we reflect back upon the fallen, it's important to remember that these men and women came from all walks of life. But they all had one thing in common, a love of freedom and of our country. Your presence here today and that of people gathering all across America is a tribute to those lost troops and their families. It's a way to say we will remember. From the soldiers who shivered and starved through the winter at Valley Forge, to the doughboys crouched in the muddy trenches of France, to the platoon patrolled the hazy jungles of Vietnam, and the young man or woman patrolling the mountains of Afghanistan, we remember and honor them all. Thank you for attending today. God bless you and your families. God bless our troops, and God bless America. Thank you.
Thank you, Commander. Next, we'll have Mayor Rodney Dale, Ketchikan Gateway Borough.
Thank you. It's an honor to be here today. And friends, as we take a moment to pay tribute to the brave men and women who paid the ultimate price for the country, just as the chaplain said in John 15:13, greater love has no one than this, than to lay down one's life for one's friends. In the nearly 250 years since the creation of this nation, our honored dead have held a special place in our hearts, and we remember their sacrifice on this solemn day. A few quotes from over the years can help us put this day in perspective. Our first president, George Washington, said, "The hour is fast approaching on which the honor and success of this army and the safety of our bleeding country depend. Remember, officers and soldiers, that you are free men fighting for the blessings of liberty." And they fought for that liberty not because they hated what was in front of them, but because they loved what was behind them. That's G.K. Chesterton. For the country they protect, we must never forget why we have and why we need our military. Our armed forces exist solely to ensure our nation is safe, so that each and every one of us can sleep soundly at night, knowing that we have guardians at the gate. And that's Allen West. And if we could ask the families of those who died how we should honor their lives, they would probably say it is foolish and wrong to mourn the men who died. Rather, we should thank God that such men lived. And that's George S. Patton, Jr. And our duty as Americans should always be that just as on the battlefield the military pledges to leave no soldier behind, as a nation, we should let it be our pledge that when they return home, we need leave no veteran behind. And that's Dan Lipinski. Because ultimately, our flag does not fly because the wind moves it. It flies with the last breath of each soldier who died protecting it. And that was an unknown author. And in the end, we'll remember not the words of our enemies, but the silence of our friends. Martin Luther King Jr. So as you celebrate this Memorial Day with family and friends, I urge you to take a moment to reflect on those who sacrificed their lives so that we can enjoy a beautiful cloudy day like today, full of freedom and one nation under God. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Next, we'll have the Ketchikan City Mayor, Bob Servison.
Thank you.
So first of all, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to thank you all who are either viewing or here present today for standing with us in recognition of those that we honor and all those that have paid the ultimate sacrifice in the service of this nation. I would like to take just a moment to recognize all those among us who have served or are currently serving, as well as any here that have lost loved ones in the service. We are humbled by your sacrifice. As you look across the grounds of Bayview Cemetery, you can see that Ketchikan has served its country well. I would also specifically like to recognize a dear friend that recently passed, Spec 4 Charles Thomas Combat, U.S. Army. He served in Vietnam as a member of a long-range reconnaissance patrol alert. His group was assigned Search and Destroy. His patrol worked in Zone 3, 3rd Corps, an area where Agent Orange was heavily used. I believe that his life was cut short by his time there. He commented to me once upon the death of one of his patrol members that there was no longer enough members left to have 6 pallbearers. A remnant of war that I think a lot of our veterans are exposed to. I have an official proclamation from the city of Ketchikan. Whereas Monday, May 25th, 2020, in cities and towns throughout our nation, Americans will join together to honor the fallen heroes of our American Armed Forces. And whereas in May 1868, Major John A. Logan called for a nationwide day of remembrance to pay tribute to those who gave their life serving our country, which would officially be designated Memorial Day by Congress. And whereas over 70,000 veterans of the United States Armed Forces currently reside in Alaska. And whereas our men and women in uniform have sacrificed their life to maintain the security of our great nation and liberties we hold so dear. And whereas members of our armed forces continue to work towards peace and prosperity in the world. And whereas we must pledge to never forget the men and women of our armed forces who gave the ultimate sacrifice in defending freedoms. We should express our gratitude to the families of our fallen warriors. We must keep faith with all those who have died for our country in a fight of permanent peace. We must honor our unwavering commitment to all members of the armed forces. Now therefore be it resolved that I, Robert Stevenson, Mayor of the City of Ketchikan, do hereby proclaim May 25th, 2020, Memorial Day. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Next we'll have Representative Dan Ortiz, District 36.
Good morning, everybody, and thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to be a part of this service, to be a part of this community, to have the honor and the privilege to represent those of us here in Ketchikan, Alaska. But first and foremost, always to say thank you for those who made this event possible and for those who served this great country. On July 4th, 1776, the Second Continental Congress adopted the Declaration of Independence, and thus started the American experiment. Within the words of the Declaration, quote, all men are created equal, endowed by their Creator with the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Those words, I think, best encapsulated what this new experiment of America was going to be about. In our 244 years of existence since that time, there have been many times when the great American experiment has been tested, and it has not always been on the battlefield where those deaths have occurred. The troubles this nation saw during the economic turmoil of the Great Depression, and the unrest and turmoil this nation endured during the Civil Rights Movement in the late 50s and through most of the 60s, were periods when the American experiment in freedom, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness were under question. However, I think few can argue that when you look back in history as to when the American experiment was put to its greatest test, when the foundational principles centered on the freedoms and rights outlined in the first 10 amendments of our Constitution were being challenged the most, you have to say that it was during events like the U.S. Civil War and at places like Gettysburg, Pennsylvania, at the battles of the Somme in France in World War I, on the beaches of Normandy in France in World War II, at Khe Sanh in the Vietnam War, on the streets of Fallujah in Iraq, or in cities like Kandahar in Afghanistan in more recent history. It's at those places where the American experiment, the American dream, were truly put to the test. President Lincoln himself spoke of that challenge to the American experiment when he said in his opening words at the Gettysburg Address, spoken just a short time after the Battle of Gettysburg in 1863, 77 years ago, our forefathers brought forth on this continent a new nation, conceived in liberty and dedicated to the proposition that all men are created equal. Now we are engaged in a great civil war, testing whether that nation or any nation so conceived, so dedicated, can long endure. On May 5th, 1868, 3 full years after the conclusion of the U.S. Civil War, Memorial Day was established as a national holiday to have Americans stop and remember. Now, more than 1 million soldiers have died in battle while serving to defend those freedoms and values since the Continental Army under General George Washington went into battle in defense of that newly founded United States of America. Since 2006, 5 years after the start of the major combat operations in Afghanistan and 3 years after the U.S.-led invasion of Iraq, more than 16,750 active duty personnel and mobilized reservists have died while serving the United States Armed Forces. So here we are today, on May 25th, 2020, in Ketchikan, Alaska, gathered in remembrance of those who made the supreme sacrifice in defense of the American experiment. In making that sacrifice, they were never able to return to their families, their wives, husbands, parents, to their children, to their communities, in order to pursue their share of the American dream. In laying down their lives, they were no longer able to continue to access life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. So, we offer our humble thanks in great thanksgiving for those who did the most to preserve the great American experiment in freedom, liberty, helping to ensure that the answer to the question that Abraham Lincoln raised, whether that nation or any nation so conceived and so dedicated can long endure. Why, yes, Mr. Lincoln, President Lincoln, it does endure. We're still here pursuing those freedoms 157 years later in places like Ketchikan, Alaska, that were not even a part of the United States when you spoke at Gettysburg. That's largely due to the supreme sacrifice made by more than 1 million soldiers who died in battle in order to ensure the United States of America continues to endure. So, we must always remember the sacrifice of those soldiers that died in battle while serving the United States of America, who now lie in cemeteries all across the United States and around the world, made so that we all here might continue that great American experiment. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Ortiz. Next, we'll have Representative for Senators Sullivan and Murkowski, Sherry Klein. Come on up, please.
Good morning. So I have a message from Senator Murkowski first. For Alaskans, Memorial Day is typically our big kickoff for summer, with sunlight nearly all day and a long weekend to enjoy the great outdoors with our friends and family. And it's also a day of tradition and ceremony as we honor the fallen who have served our nation. This year is different for many of us, and many of our Memorial Day ceremonies are canceled or we follow new guidance due to the coronavirus. But it doesn't take a large gathering or multiple speeches to honor those who have bravely defended America and all that we hold dear. Let each of us with our families and in our own ways reflect on the service and sacrifice of those in our armed services who gave their lives in defense of our great nation. Remember their children and families who loved and supported them. These heroes selflessly sacrificed for the freedoms we enjoy today, and we honor them. To you and your families, be safe and be well. Thank you. And then I also have a message from U.S. Senator Dan Sullivan. Hello, Ketchikan. I wish I could be with you today as we recognize this very solemn holiday and remember so many Americans who we have lost throughout our country's history. Our brave men and women who have paid the ultimate sacrifice fighting and dying for our country. As Alaskans, honoring our military is literally in our DNA. I am always proud of how many Alaskans come out to Memorial Day services across our great state. Of course, with this pandemic, even that has to change our Memorial Day weekend. But I know, and we all know, that we will still be thinking about the fallen. As a state with more veterans per capita than any other state in the country, we will be honoring those who have gone before us. Even though we're facing unprecedented challenges of our own, let's once again take the time to reflect upon the men and women in uniform who have gone before us. Let us honor their service and sacrifice and honor the families that are still with us. The Gold Star mothers, Gold Star fathers, and Gold Star families who still live with these terrible wounds of war every single day. And let us remember that so many Alaskans on active duty, in the Guard, and in the reserves are on the front line of freedom, defending our state and defending our nation. Today we thank them for their service and we let them know how proud we are of all of them. We also thank all Alaskans, community organizations, veterans, and veteran groups who are tireless in keeping the memory of our brave heroes alive. Yours is a labor of love. So on this Memorial Day, I hope you enjoy time with your family, time with your friends, and always remember that the freedoms that we enjoy are not free. Thank you all. God bless you. God bless Alaska. And God bless the United States of America.
Thank you, Sherry. Please allow me to read the executive proclamation by the Governor Dunleavy. Whereas America was founded on the principles of liberty, opportunity, and justice for all, and we recognize the men and women of our armed forces who have valiantly defended these values throughout our nation's history. And whereas each year on the last Monday in May, America's paused to observe Memorial Day, a national holiday set aside in 1971 to remember those who made the ultimate sacrifice in service to our nation. And whereas the men and women of our armed forces protect our borders, citizens, and allies, fight tyranny around the world, and defend the values that make our nation great. And whereas Alaska is home to servicemen and women, including veterans from all branches of the military, and we are forever grateful to them and their families for their selfless contributions and sacrifices. And whereas Memorial Day provides us with an opportunity to value those brave warriors who died to guarantee the liberties we continue to enjoy today, and to remind us of the true cost of our freedom, so we may never take it for granted. And whereas on this day, Let us reflect on the sacrifices of our brave men and women who served and died for our country. Honor their memory as America heroes. Pray for the loved ones they left behind and recommit to defending the nation they died to protect. Now, therefore, I, Michael Dunleavy, Governor of the State of Alaska, do hereby proclaim May 25th, 2020 as Memorial Day. Now let's allow the VFW and the Legion Auxiliary to place the wreath at the base of the flag. Thank you. We follow by the Veterans Prayer by Pastor Alan McElroy.
Pray with me. Eternal God, you spoke all of the cosmos into existence. God, we know that your voice from your word burst the cedars of Lebanon. God, the very heavens you created declare your glory. We read in your word that in your providence you also give us leaders over us, and with that, warriors, men and women who are willing to stand outside the camp so that we can sleep peacefully at night. Father, I pray for their families that may be dealing with their loss today, God. I pray that you would encourage them, would remind them that their loss is not in vain, that we cherish the freedom that they paid for. Father, I pray for the veterans before me today and those in our community that may be struggling with the loss of friends. God, I pray that they would be encouraged as well. God, we also thank you that in your providence, you provided the greatest sacrifice, and that of Jesus Christ, that we can be in right relationship with you. God, in his name I pray. Amen.
Thank you, Bill. Next, we'll follow with the VFW chaplain, Dennis Burgeon, for the benediction, please.
Father God, you've given us another glorious day. Keep our hearts true to those that have gone before us and have fallen, Lord. Give mercy and kindness upon their loved ones that lost them. Lord, just keep our hearts true each and every day and remember the great sacrifices made for us. That we are free people through your great providence. In the name of Jesus, amen.
Color guard. Please retire the colors.
Forward. March. Colors. Read. Right, face. Forward, march.
That concludes our Memorial Day service for today. I appreciate everyone for coming out on this beautiful day. Thank you.